G'day folks. Well, I've had this little outboard power pack sitting around for a while, sort of waiting for equipment autopsy, and since I'm having a bit of a clean up outside, I figure I better get around to it, otherwise I'm just going to throw it out. I can already think of a good title for the video. This Johnson outboard got a bad head job. That's wrong in so many ways. But yeah, good old blue Max, Loctite blue Max. They filled those two bolt holes up with it. That one there they couldn't get to because it was originally sitting in the top half of the cowling, and the cowling came up to about here. So they obviously haven't even gotten to that one. These washers and generic low tensile metric bolts are standard as that one. I mean, I haven't changed anything on this, so we've got completely wrong fasteners, 3 missing fasteners. Those are not proper head bolts, those are just standard engineering bolts. Same with the top of the thermostat housing. They've got generic various mixed washers. There's a spring washer there and there, flat washer, 2 flat washers. Yeah, that's not how you're supposed to do it. A 12-year-old could have done better. I just found this in the bin out the front of the scrapyard one night, or day, and yeah, they let me take it home for equipment autopsy, and I think that was about 8 months ago. So they're probably wondering why I haven't bought it back yet. Not that it really matters, but yeah, it takes a special kind of stupid to do that. Or just people who don't know what the hell they're doing. Looks like the entire exhaust discharge manifold's also been glued up with this crap. It's going to be fairly tricky getting it apart, but I'll try and split it all off. Yeah, as far as I know, I think it's about an 8 or 12... No, I think it's about an 8 horsepower Johnson power head. It's not particularly big. Spark plugs weren't even screwed in. So I haven't really touched it since I got it, it's just moved around outside. Yeah, standard plugs. Not the old Perma-Gap plugs. So the coils and things on it might be fine, but they've completely botched the head replacement. You can see an air gap right through there. Not going to work. I think somebody needs a good lesson in how engines work. Nothing better than listening to a bit of Fear Factory and dismantling old engines. This is the top of the carburetor. It's a downdraft style system, with the top being the flywheel and the intake up there. It's not like the old ones which had side draft carburetors on them. This one's built into the intake manifold. It's a newer model. It might have even been an 18 horsepower or 16 or something like that. Big enough. It's got the same size cylinder head as the Chrysler 20 horsepower that I've got, but yeah, I'd say it's about 18 to 20. Cork float looking a bit damaged. Smells like really old ethanol fuel plus a little bit of oil mix. A lot of corrosion on the brass too. Hasn't attacked the alley housing, but yeah, pretty straightforward. Choke valve, choke butterfly, and various passages and things. The float's somewhat sticky from sitting, of course. What's that? Don't know. Probably mixture adjustment. It's like a speedo cable, so it's probably for fine tuning your mixture on the go. Either way, we'll try and get the rest of this top housing off and get that off, try and get the rest of that off, get the flywheel and everything off. We'll turn this into a proper autopsy. Originally I wasn't going to take the bottom end apart, but I want to elaborate on how some of these work. I had quite a few questions about how multi-cylinder 2-strokes work, at least naturally aspirated ones anyway. Well, the coils look pretty good. The same as the ones in the 3 horsepower Seahorse that I restored a while ago. Well, these are Mercury ones, but the pretty much most of these engines from the 1960s up to the late 1980s use the same coils. You can get them online for about $15–20 each. Pretty sure that's all I paid for mine. I wish I had this thing earlier, otherwise I would have used the coils. Though you can clearly see, I think that one there is loose. It's been touching the flywheel. That one's nice and clean, but yeah, I'd say this one's been floating around somewhat, or it's just been adjusted way too tight. But either way, there's a good pair of condensers and a good pair of coils on here. I'm going to keep this assembly. Okay, well, finally gotten into what I wanted to get into to begin with. The main intake cover. You've got to dismantle the whole thing just to get to one bolt and remove this casting. But that gives us the opportunity to look at the reed valves. They look like copper or brass. In very good condition too. And they just bolt on as separate assemblies. I've bashed this housing trying to loosen these screws up, so the housing itself's trash, but the reed valves themselves are still alright. Guess I should put them aside in case anyone wants them. They seem to be pretty good. Now, the reason for the reed valves is so that each cylinder can intake fuel and air mixture when it wants to, because naturally aspirated two strokes, use vacuum in the crankcase to draw fuel and air into the crankcase, and then the reed valves close and check the flow like a check valve. And as the piston, after the exhaust cycle, two-stroke exhaust cycle is part of the intake stroke, so piston goes down and the compressed fuel and air mixture inside here then rushes into the cylinder, pushing the exhaust gases out the exhaust and replenishing the fuel air charge in the cylinder. So there's no mechanical valving on a two-stroke like this. Things like the Detroit diesel two-strokes have mechanical exhaust valves operated off a cam, but their intakes are generally, I believe, to be reed valves. Or piston ported anyway. Maybe not, they probably don't have reed valves, but they'd be piston ported. They don't have a mechanical spring-loaded valve and a tappet or a push rod or anything like that. So I'm going to get this other bolt out and we'll have a further look. Okay, so we're on the intake side here again, and as I was saying before, when the engine cycles to compression stroke, we'll look at this cylinder only. It's on compression stroke now and the piston's on its way up. Now, as it does that, it draws a vacuum on the volume inside here, inside the crankcase. There's the big end of the con rod and there's the crankshaft. There's no wet sump. Obviously, most of these can't run a wet sump. Certain two-strokes do, but they have mechanical valving instead of crankcase induction like this. But just going on what this is right now, being piston ported, the crankcase will have a fresh charge of fuel and air inside it, and the cylinder would have fired just before top dead center. So we've got ignition up here, fuel and air waiting down here, and as the crankshaft continues turning, the reed valves are now closed. They're pressed shut by the pressure that's building inside here, because as the piston comes down it displaces volume and compresses fuel and air inside the crankcase. That's why it's essential that these seals, the shaft seals and the gaskets around the housing itself are intact. Otherwise your fuel air charge comes out here and your cylinder runs lean or not at all. Same with these gaskets here. If this gasket was blown out like that, broken, and you had a gap, it'd blow some of that fuel air charge out the side. So making sure these gaskets and things on anything from a weed trimmer all the way up to a big outboard or something like that, make sure your gaskets and your crankshaft seals are in good condition. If they aren't, it won't run properly or at all. So yeah, now it's fired. We've got exhaust ports on the other side, which I'm going to take the manifold off the other side and show them. So high pressure gas. By the time this piston's down to about there, it should be venting out the exhaust. So piston comes down, exhaust, high pressure fuel air charge that's trapped inside the crankcase blows up through these ports, up into there, and replenishes the chamber with fresh fuel and air, and the piston resumes a compression cycle and fires again. So it's 2-stroke. Every single time it approaches top dead center, it fires. Whereas a 4-stroke, like a 4-stroke car engine, one of the upward strokes would be to push exhaust gases out of the cylinder. Then it would go down again, drawing a fresh charge of fuel in from the inlet valves. Then it would go up again, compressing that fresh charge of fuel, ignite it, go down the power stroke, exhaust valve opens, and then it pushes it out again. That's a 4-stroke. But 2-stroke, every single compression cycle, every upward cycle is a firing or preparing to fire. It will fire once it reaches or approaches top dead center, typically just before top dead center. And being a 2-cylinder, it does it pretty much every quarter of a rotation of the crankshaft. Yeah, if you look at where the key is now, the key's almost at the bottom. So that one's on top, fire. Sorry, half rotation, fire. Every half rotation of the crankshaft, one of the cylinders is firing. Yeah, so there's the crank. That cylinder's at top dead center. They're quite neat with the way they do it. And of course, the crankcase is separated. There's a seal there, a seal there, and a seal there. If you get blow-by between the 2 cylinders, it won't run either.